Welcome to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast with Nicole Merritt and Dr. Robert Zeitlin.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I wanted to tell you just a little story, if that's okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear this story.
So yesterday, I was with my daughter. We were watching my younger two swimming, and she got this every mom knows about the dollar section at Target. I don't know if you know about it, but that place is awesome.
I'm not a mom, but somehow I know about it.
But they had these dollar workbooks, and they had one for her. It was a little advanced. It was a second to third grade, and it was about the presidents. And she was reading one about Abraham Lincoln, and it described him as Honest Abe. And she had a good question for me. She said, why do people like more presidents than others? And my response to that was, well, they do different things while they're in office. How they handle the financial state of the world, how our military is doing, how is education doing, all different things. And then she said, so nobody likes our current president? And I said to her, well, that's not very true. Some people do. Yes, there are many people that don't, but there are also many people that do. How far, when your kids were younger, like my daughter's age, about 7, did you go with talking to your children about the news or politics, or about what could be considered controversial topics?
Yeah, I think we've definitely raised our kids during a time where there were a lot of controversial topics out in the news and things you had to explain, not just politics, but like world events like terrorism and things that happened, and like how do you break that down to like your kids' level and what do they need to know? But also, like, I think you're asking also, how do you share all that without necessarily telling them what to think?
Correct. Yeah, I find it a struggle. I don't leave the news on in front of my children. Like if I start watching it in the morning, but then they come join me on the couch, we switch very quickly to Disney Junior or Sprout or PBS or something like that. There's too much negative and adult talk for me, or local tragedies that happen that I just don't feel that their brain needs to be filled with, at least not yet. And maybe it's because I have such varied ages in my house, 7 to 2. But I wonder when I will feel comfortable, or when they will start pushing me more to want to learn. Do you remember kind of what age that happened for your children?
I don't remember, but I do remember them starting to, like when big elections come around or when big things happen, their conversations around the larger family table, like with grandparents, around different topics, that like that's where adult conversation seeps in. We can manage our own kids' experience in our house, but once you start to get into the, like we talked about before, like the tribe, like the larger like village, then all of a sudden they're exposed to different things. And also they have cousins who start to get interested in stuff. So like, I don't remember exactly when it started seeping in, but I remember always trying to like figure out what was appropriate for them to know at different times, or how could we explain this in a way, like you said, like your daughter's perception that like everyone feels X or Y. It's like, no, actually there are people that you don't meet all the time who may feel differently, or
Right, and I think because I know she's not getting it in my home from me, that she is hearing these things from maybe kids at school that are hearing it at home. And it's not to say that I'm in the right and they're in the wrong, but I also don't think I'm in the wrong.
Right.
Either. So for me, it's a struggle. I want to be very much honest and authentic with my children, but I like to have the conversation when they're age appropriate. And if we have to have it because something has come up that I don't think she's ready for, I want to talk about it at a time when I have time to go into it. You know what I mean? And
Right.
fully kind of show her the different perspectives that people might have.
Right. And I would imagine that there are people listening right now who also have differences in their homes, like differences of either political opinions or religious opinion. You know, this is civil society, so we're not talking about politics or religion, right? But we are kind of talking about politics. Like if a couple has different points of view, like how does that play out in front of the kids or through the kids? Like, are they trying to like win arguments and like try to get more kids over to their side? You know, I think it's tricky because I know definitely in the larger family settings, there's definitely like, it's almost competitive, you know, like everyone believes this and that one person needs to be convinced that they're wrong, you know, and like the kids see that. What does that mean to them?
Right. And then, so see, I run into a problem. So I've written quite a few articles on how I'm the quiet girl, right? I'm a quiet feminist. And I wrote one that's, she's just not that deep, because I feel like people might have that perception of me. Yes, I will out myself. I don't watch the news or read a paper or
when would you?
Or open up my CNN like alerts that come in. I should probably pay more attention than I do, but I don't. But I prefer to step back from conversations and just take it all in rather than spew out how I feel. Because, and I've used this line, sometimes I feel like you have to disengage to engage. Like you gotta step back. And that moment right there might not be the moment where I can chime in and say how I feel, but there might be one down the line where you might be more perceptive because I listened and took in what you were saying. But then you run into, no. One thing I wanted to say is that people have told me or made me to believe that I'm the problem, right? We're in the culture that it's like you need to stand up for what you believe. You need to step up. Why are you not protesting? Why are you not doing this? You know, and then am I the problem?
Yeah, I was going to ask about disengage to engage. I think that's fascinating. So do you mean like disengage from like actively like blasting your opinion to listen a little more and then like choose your battles and when you want to engage? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. I mean, I think that you don't have to engage at every opportunity. And a lot of people, anytime religion is brought up or politics or education or gun violence, like immediately it's like, bam, here's my opinion in your face. And why aren't you on board with it? and maybe that is how things get done. You know, maybe that is how a lot of people feel stuff gets accomplished. But I also think that there is a fight you can make for kind of being more methodical about how and when you engage and staying quiet a little more often than you speak. But I know that that's not widely, and I'm not saying that my opinion is the right opinion. I'm just sharing how I feel.
No, I think it's a lot like you've said before with parents who have worries. You know, you can have that friend that you vent with, but if it's just wallowing in it and it's not getting anywhere, is it moving the needle at all? Like, what are you trying to do? Are you just trying to be heard? Like, and I understand that a lot of us just need to be heard, but like I heard about a gun violence protest this last weekend, and basically there's always a counter protest. So like, you know, it's a protest against gun violence, and then there's this organized sort of open carry protest that happens there. But then the conversations that happen between the people that actually moved the needle forward, actually opened up minds and curiosity to another point of view, like that was mind-blowing to me, because I just picture these two sides yelling at each other and everyone goes home. It's like the cartoon, you know, the dog and like the rooster, you know, they like show up and they punch their cards and they fight and then they go home, and it's like, why are we even doing this?
But some people would say, and I'm not saying that it's not right, some people would say that conversation wouldn't have happened if the two didn't step up, you know what I mean, to argue. If there weren't those loud people, then maybe that the conversation that moved the needle wouldn't have even, you know, taken place. So it's like there's a need for, And that's why, as you and I have talked about before in parenting, like sometimes I feel like a hypocrite, like I'm riding both sides of the fence. But I feel like there is so much gray in life and in parenting that it's not all black and white, and it's not all, if you're on this side, then that means that you're not this, or you're not this, so you're definitely not that. Like,
no, and I'll go even further than that. Not only is it not black and white, but like even your approach, like let's call your approach the disengage to engage, right? Even your approach is something that your kids are learning from. Like your kids are learning from your husband's style of how to deal with these conversations, your style of how to deal with this conversation, that teacher's style, the teacher that comes in and can't help but like talk about politics that one day in school or whatever, or they get a sense, across the family Thanksgiving table that grandpa has this certain opinion. Like that's all, they're learning from all of that. And I think there's nothing right or wrong with any of those approaches because you're just exposing your kids to a different approach. I think maybe the only wrong is when you're overexposing your kids to stuff they're not ready for. Right. Or you're jamming an opinion down their throat and you're kind of saying this is the only way, because heads up to those parents that are doing that the adults that I know that say, I grew up in this kind of household and now I do something totally different, or I grew up this way and now I'm agnostic, or I'm an atheist, or, my parents are this way and I'm on the other end of the spectrum, you're only going to create the opposite of what you're trying to create. So if you think you think your kids are robots that you can just program, it's not going to work out that way.
Right. And I totally agree with you that I think no matter how hard you try to leverage your influence over your children, they are going to be an adult who is going to think for themselves in some way, shape, or form. And you may or may not have woven like a few of your beliefs into there, and they may, those may stay, but at some point they're going to deviate somewhere from your perspective and your point of view and your belief. And you're going to love them regardless. So why go crazy about it now? Because your love for them is not going to stop just because, they feel differently than you about X or Y.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a struggle. I mean, there's occasions where we'll have to have the news on because like something local big is happening and we don't want to miss it. Like it's happening live, and then the questions start coming and it's like, oh, like how much do I tell you? How much do I not tell you?
Right. Man, I've stopped watching the local news, but the other day the TV was on and I'm doing some work and I look up and I watched 5 minutes of it. It was one tragedy after another. This bus smushed this guy against this building. These two cop cars collided. This off-duty cop was shot. It's like there are people who bathe in that news all the time, and I can't imagine how they feel each day because I felt overwhelmed. And I'm sure that the opposite is true. I can't get enough of the politics stuff. And I'm sure there are people, in fact, I live with one. My wife can't watch that stuff at all. Like, it's just too much, but I can't get enough of it. So I guess there are people who get something out of that tragedy kind of local news. I don't know.
Right. And then there's me who, I embarrassingly know more about Peppa Pig and Dora the Explorer, than I do about what's going on in the world right now. And to some, that's very shameful. But look, here's you and I, two different people, one who is very up on current events and me who is admittedly not. And we're having a civil conversation.
Imagine.
Imagine that. I just feel like that could happen a lot more if more people were open to it.
I agree. And I also have to say in your defense and in defense of creatives, I've met some very high flying, people who design $1 million houses and people who are on just trying to manage, you're trying to manage how much information is impacting your kid's brain. They actually manage their exposure to the news and current events at a very high level because they don't feel like they can do and reach a flow state and be able to be creative and do what they need to do. Right. If they're exposed to all that stuff, if they're processing and dealing with and like recovering from the latest fire that consumed this or that. And, it's too much.
Right. It seems a little hypocritical sometimes that, like, we've talked about, raise your child to have a smart mouth, like that article that I wrote. And we've talked about how I loved how your professor said to you, like, you've got great ideas. Why don't you talk more? Talk more, talk more, talk more. And then here I am saying, talk less.
I don't think you're saying talk less.
Yeah, no, thank you for thank you for feeling that I'm not saying that. I guess I'm saying listen more than I'm saying talk less.
Mm-hmm. I don't think you're saying talk more. I don't think my professor is saying you need to get on a you need to run for office and tell everyone your political opinion. He said, you have good ideas. You have great ideas. Whether you're getting your ideas from Peppa Pig or from the local news, like, you're putting ideas out all the time. Ideas for these podcasts come out of you oftentimes. And like, these ideas are just coming out and they're helping people. So I don't think there's anything talk less about you. I think you're doing a lot of listening and a lot of processing, but like, I don't think we necessarily get our ideas from our parents' political views or from the news or from local news or from politics or, this is all stuff we have to process and deal with and move through.
Right.
And sometimes at the Thanksgiving table more than other places.
Right. Yeah. One of the articles I first, like early in my blogs, I wrote, when everyone has an opinion, because it seems, my children have opinions on which underwear they wear, which shoes they wear, what they eat for dinner, all this stuff. And you raise your kids and you're like, yes, I want to have an independent thinker who's always, speaking up for themselves. And then, in the exhausting parenting day, you're like, oh my gosh, why do you have so many opinions? So it's definitely parenthood and these instances with things on the news is a great way to ride the line between, yes, I want you to have these thoughts. I want you to back them up with all that you're learning, but know when and when not to speak and when to listen and how to do both respectfully.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. This is a great talk.
Yes, definitely. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss an episode.